From Dubbo to Cobar. From Lightning Ridge to Mudgee. James Finlay on ABC Western Plains.
And your next local news coming up in 12 minutes as well. Well, the second last meeting for this term of the Dubbo Regional Council was held last night, which means the Mayor, Matt Dickerson, is with you this morning. Very good morning to you. A little bit more of a toned down meeting last night after the meeting last month you were here. You know, it was one of the biggest turnouts for a council meeting.
It looked very disappointing. I looked in the public gallery and there were about 6 people there. I went, last month I loved it with 240 people in the audience.
Yeah, it was a real show.
Yeah, it was a little bit different to last month. So I'd like to see 240 at every council meeting, but I'm sure, James, there are at least 240 people sitting in their homes
watching online.
Streaming.
Yes.
I know you would have been, Mel would have been, the entire. You probably do it as a little event where you
we all
some
get
popcorn.
together. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, put a little barbecue on. Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, the plans for Australia Day next year were discussed. What was decided?
So there was obviously a lot of discussion about that, and one of the things that I love about the structure we have at the moment is where we have our committee meetings 2 weeks before the council meeting, and it signals to the community which way councils are thinking. So at the committee meetings, we talked about a Friday and a Saturday night for the two events. So Friday night in Wellington, Saturday night in Dubbo, and then the Australia Day next year is on the Sunday. So basically a twilight and a twilight event for the two different events. Mm-hmm. And council certainly got a bit of feedback about that. I certainly encouraged people in the community to give feedback direct to councillors, and based on, I think, a few things, but including that feedback, the decision we made last night was that the Wellington event would be held as a twilight event, the same as it's been the last 2 years. So on the 25th of January, 6:30pm, and then the Dubbo event will be held on the morning of the 26th of January. So essentially that's the same as it's been the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. There was some discussion about going back to both events on the Sunday, but ultimately council thought that was a backward move because we'd made some progress with the previous 2 years where we'd broken new ground by having a twilight event in Wellington. So good discussion around the table and a few different views there, but ultimately council resolved to go ahead with that in terms of the Australia Day Sunday and the twilight event in Wellington on the Saturday.
Yes, I guess it really kind of spreads it out for you then too. You don't need to be in two places at one time, right?
Well, you would still hold the two events at the same time if you needed to. You've got councillors that could attend one event in Wellington. You've got a deputy mayor, whoever that might be next year, because obviously council elections, as you've mentioned, coming up. So a deputy mayor could attend one and the mayor could attend the other, for example. So you've still got that ability. Puts a bit more pressure on staff to try and organise two events simultaneously, but it's not impossible. Mm-hmm. But I think it does make it a bit better to spread those two out.
Okay, so it sounds like no change there when it comes to
no change from the previous 2 years, which is still a change, and there are still some people out there who aren't happy about the twilight event, and I take that on board. But again, whatever decision you make, when you make decisions, you normally make some people happy, some people unhappy. That's right. That's the job.
You can never make everyone happy at the same time. Look, earlier this week it was announced that renewable energy developer Elio will have signed a voluntary planning agreement with council to do with social housing. What are the plans there?
Well, I like that you pronounce the name because I'm not sure how to pronounce the name. Well done. Saves me from saying it.
I'm assuming that's the right way of pronouncing it, but yes.
I'm going with you. You're a radio announcer. I'm backing you all the way, James. So it's one of the interesting things that we have, and this is one of the challenges that we have as a council, which we're happy to take on the challenge, but we've got 37, a minimum, I think, of 37 projects around our renewable energy zone, and with all of these, we want to negotiate a voluntary planning agreement. Now, if I say to you, James, could you volunteer to give me some money? You're probably going to say no. And this is the challenge we have because they don't have to give us money. Every time we get one across the line, and we've created a framework that's nation-leading framework in this, we're always pretty happy with it. In this particular one, we've managed to negotiate $1 million, so $200,000 a year over the next 5 years. And one of the things that's interesting with VPAs is that you have a negotiation with the company because they're giving you money voluntarily. They usually want to have a bit of a say in where that goes. And you talk about your community strategic plans and where the money might like to be used, and then we come up with an agreed position, if you like. So it's a complicated process, overly complicated in my opinion. So in this particular example, the money will be used towards social housing development and basically just to give some assistance in social housing around the community. Now, $1 million or 5 lots of $200,000 is not going to do a lot in terms of that. So it's not about let's go and build a house because you're not going to build many houses for $200,000.
No, it's going to build a whole apartment building or anything.
No, that's exactly right. So the whole idea is this: basically it'll be used to identify areas, add to different areas. It might be, for example, to help other projects get across the line. I can't even tell you exactly how it will be used. It'll be one of those things that we'll work it out as we go. First and foremost, we've got an agreement signed. It won't kick in until 2026, so we won't see $1 until 2026. In the meantime, we've got a bit of time to work with the company, whose name I won't mention because you'll...
Excelio.
Thank you. An opportunity to work with them to see how best to utilise that money. Bottom line is, it'll add to the social housing framework in the community, which is fantastic. That's what we want. We want to keep developing the community, and that money will be used for that. We've got other examples, James, where we've used money from planning agreements to do things like develop our public art strategy. We've got a concept there, a strategy, but we don't have money for it. But now, with one of our VPAs we've signed, we've now got money for that. So it's used in a whole range of different ways.
So Excelio are a renewable energy developer. Why do they want to give council money?
Well, they don't. No one wants to give money away.
Well, they don't have to give you the money.
They don't have to, and this is the challenge. And one of the things that I've talked to both Penny Sharp, the state minister, and Chris Bowen, the federal minister, is the whole idea of these being voluntary planning agreements. I and many other councils involved in this space would much rather it be a condition of consent. Because we're not the consent authority, we can't make any demands on these various planners, proponents, because they don't actually get us to say yes or no to the project. They'll go through the state government. The state government says you need to have a discussion with the local council about some form of community benefit fund, some form of VPA, but you don't have to come to an agreement. So it really is one of those cases, James, we go to the proponent and say, could we please have some money? We'll smile nicely.
Yeah.
But ultimately, most of them say it's probably worth it for social licence, probably worth it for the community aspect of it.
So it's kind of their corporate social responsibility.
Yeah, that's right. It's a social responsibility in terms of trying to get them to make the community feel okay about these projects.
Right.
We have a framework that says we ask for and expect 1.5% of the capital investment value.
Right,
so
okay.
whatever the project is worth, then we would like 1.5% of that, and then take that amount, divide it by, say, 30, if it's a 30-year project, and pay that each year to council with indexation.
Yeah.
So the idea...
Is it an ongoing thing, or is it just when they start?
It's basically when the start, and there's different times that might trigger the start.
Okay.
But it's when it starts and through to the useful life of the project. That's normally a 25 or 30-year project.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you another example. There's another wind farm that's a $2 billion wind farm. So 1.5% of that's $30 million. So with that one, we've signed up an agreement. Council will receive $1 million in the first year, and then for the next 30 years, $1 million plus indexation each year. So with all of these different VPAs that we're trying to sign up, we hope by the time the renewable energy zone is built out that we'll have about an extra $10 million a year to spend on various projects. There'll be lots of strings attached to those amounts. Like this one with social housing, there'll be other ones like the public art strategy I mentioned. So there'll be lots of strings attached to the various projects, but ultimately it will make the community better.
It's 7:26 on ABC Western Plains. I'm James Findlay. With you is the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, Matt Dickerson. The last penultimate council meeting for this term was last night. So just on this plan, just how much say do they have on so now you're going into the planning phase, right? With this funding, with Excelio?
This proponent has got approval from the state government already.
Yeah.
So they've basically got that project approved. And most of these projects, in fact, just about all these projects that we talk about are not going through council in terms of us being the consent authority. They're going through the state government. But again, part of that is you have a discussion with the local council. And if they're smart, they would have a discussion with the local council regardless, because you want to make sure that the local community, you understand the local community, and the best organisation to understand and give that feedback, in my opinion, like maybe slightly biased there, but is the council. Why not discuss things with the local council? They've got to do it from a planning perspective, at least have the discussion. But again, another one that went through council last night, for example, was a negotiation with another solar farm that had gotten to the point where we'd gotten to 0.73%. So we said 1.5%. They went, I'll see your 1.5% and I'll show you 0.73%. Councillors ultimately decided to reject that and say, no, we have a resolution now that says go back at 1.5%. That'll go back to them. They can still laugh at us, or they might say, how about we go 1.2%? And then we'll say, no, we want 1.5. It's that ongoing negotiation. My feedback to the state and the federal government is this is a lot of work for a council. With 37 projects, we're going to have these negotiations. There might be 4 or 5 meetings for each one. There might be 200 meetings. Now, it's worthwhile. If we can get $10 million a year, it's worthwhile. But, wow, it could be much easier if it was just written in the legislation, you will pay the local council 1.5% or whatever the number is.
Right, okay.
That would make much more sense.
Well, rather than you having a separate decision, separate set of meetings with every single development that happens.
All of them want to talk you down. 1.5%, you're dreaming. I mean, it's this process, this ongoing process. And some of them have said, okay, 1.5%, we think that's reasonable, we'll pay that. But most of them want to go down below that. Some of them give you zero. We've got some projects now that the amount they're paying is zero. It's still legal for that to be approved by the state government. They've had the discussion with council. We didn't come to an agreement. We wanted more than zero. They wanted zero. So it's a complicated area.
Okay. Just quickly, is state government kind of on board looking at that kind of thing, like giving a compulsory compulsory benefit to local councils?
Not at this stage. No, there's no compulsory. There are certainly guidelines being developed, and we've certainly helped with that. But there's no compulsory component to it at this stage, which is where I think it needs to be.
Okay. Second last meeting before council elections. Have you decided whether you're running or not?
Sorry, just dropped out there for a second. Am I on the phone here? I'd rather see it as the 34th council meeting we've had in this term of council rather than the penultimate meeting. So it's been a lot of meetings there and a lot of things. We've developed a lot of things throughout those 2 years and 7 months. Only been a short time frame. Did I avoid the question well enough?
Yeah, no, not enough. Are you going to run again?
I don't know.
Don't know.
I'm still working out what I'm going to do with my life going forward.
Well, we'll see you in a month's time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, Matt Dickerson, there on ABC Western Plains. I'm James Finlay. It's nearly time for your local news now. It's coming up to 7:30.